social media education creators from all around emergency medicine, emergency nursing, emergency healthcare in general, submitted a bunch of videos, and we picked the top 4, and they're going to be presented today. So you're seeing the cream of the crop, the best of the best. They're short, though. There's only 7 minutes or less. They're presentations of anything, blogs, podcasts, apps, or really any other form of foam med created by and maintained by the presenter. So this isn't something that is owned by somebody else. The actual creators and owners of this content are the ones who are actually going to present it to you. And because of the fact that we're bringing in such amazing content, we actually had to go above and beyond and bring you even more amazing judges. Back from last year, we have 3 of the just absolute experts in foam in emergency medicine. So I'll introduce it one at a time. Dr. Seth Truger is, he's amazing. He is an emergency physician at Northwestern in Chicago, but he's also the digital media editor for JAMA Network Open. And you can find him on Twitter at MDAware. He's got lots of great followers. He has amazing content. Definitely check him out if you don't already follow him. Dr. Megan Ranney. She's an emergency physician at Brown. We all know her from there. You've also seen her on CNN and every other news outlet in the world over the past year. She is also the director of the Brown Lifespan Center for Digital Health, and over the past few months took on yet another role as Associate Dean for Strategy and Innovation at the Brown School of Public Health. She's also the co-founder of Affirm Research and of Get Us PPE, and you can find her on Twitter at Megan Ranney. And last but definitely not least, we have Dr. Lauren Westifer, who is co-founder of Foamcast, which I listen to religiously, mostly because of her and not Jeremy Faust. It's an emergency medicine podcast, and she also serves as social media and research methodology editor at Annals of Emergency Medicine, the foremost and most highly cited journal in our field. She's on Twitter at L Westifer, and so please follow her as well. There's great content coming out from Drs. Westifer, Ranney, and Dr. Truger. All right, we're going to get started. We're going to get things rolling with the first of our entries. So the first of our entries is actually by Dr. Hani Malamat, and we're going to see his video about critical care now. A lot of you, in fact, every one of you probably know who Dr. Malamat is. He's a veteran educator and resuscitationist. His goal in life, his reason for existence, is to bring together great minds to better resuscitate the critically ill. He's triple boarded in IM, in EM, and critical care. And Dr. Malamat focuses his role as an educator through social media and live conferences. So let's take a look at his video about critical care now.
Hey, my name is Hani Malamat, and I'm the editor-in-chief for criticalcarenow.com. Critical Care Now is a website that is unlike any website that is out there because it's not a blog, it's not a vlog, it's not about a podcast. It is a co-op of educators who've come together to create content for emergency medicine and critical care. And even that is not an accurate description. Let me explain. I've been doing education online for a very long time, but a few years ago, I noticed that there were many creators that started podcasts and blogs and vlogs and all sorts of things, but they didn't last very long. It wasn't that these websites weren't good. They were really good. The problem is that it was a 1 or 2 person operation, and to create great educational content, you have to provide high quality content and you have to be consistent. It seems like that consistency piece was the hard thing to keep things going. Blogs would come, there'd be lots of content for a couple weeks, and then it would disappear. Podcasts would come, lots of great episodes, I learned a lot, but then they would disappear. But why were these educational platforms disappearing? It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that with free open access medical education, people are taking time out of their own busy days to create content. And with no reimbursement, it's virtually impossible to keep sustained good quality content going. So the plan was to get a bunch of educators together, everyone lift just a little bit, and together we can create an educational collective, a co-op if you will, where we can all succeed together rather than one person to carry the load. Even though this concept of co-op of educators seemed very simple yet elegant, there was still a lot more work that needed to be done to make it come to fruition. Let's go back to the studio and I'll tell you more. I also wanted to do something completely different when it came to an educational website. You see, so many websites have just one focus, and I wanted to make this a multidisciplinary thing. I wanted to get everyone's perspective on how they take care of critically ill patients. So what we've done is we've broken down each day into different sections. D1 or Monday is our airway and breathing or airway and ventilator day. Day 2 is for medical and trauma resuscitation. Day 3 are for the subspecialties. We're talking about cardiology, GI, pulmonary, cardiothoracic surgery, all the subspecialties that make critical care and resuscitation so unique. Day 4 is pharmacology and toxicology. And when it comes to our pharmacists, we have PharmDs who are writing for us. These are the people who are in your departments helping you to make clinical decisions, so why not have them write the posts and teach everyone directly? Friday, it's the Back to Basics series. We like to call it the vitals. And what we do here is we provide the foundation of education for medical students, residents, and fellows. These are core educational topics that we feel learners need before they add on the advanced topics from the other days. Saturday is radiology and ultrasound, which is such a big part of what we do. And we have everything from basic tutorials to advanced concepts. We do blogs, we do written content, we also do videos as well. On Sunday, we wrap everything up into a summary day with high yield pearls from each of the posts from the day hyperlinked back to the main pages. After a few months of doing the website, we realized that we still weren't complete. So we added in an educator's day. Every Wednesday, we have a Teach the Teacher section that is meant for educators to learn how to better teach at the bedside or in the classroom. And one of our most popular sections is the Beyond Albuterol section every Thursday. This is a section written by respiratory therapists for respiratory therapists, and it's one of our most popular pages that we have. Our metrics show that nurses are reading this page, medical students are reading this page, residents, fellows, and even attendings are learning from respiratory therapists. I've never seen a medical webpage that incorporates respiratory therapy into the educational content. That's truly something unique about criticalcarenow.com. Even though we're only 10 months old, we have some new content that we're adding. We're adding on a day specially for nursing. This is written by nursing for nursing. We're also adding a literature review day. We're gonna go through the literature in a very unique way. Instead of just rewriting and regurgitating a paper, we're gonna critically break it down into smaller parts so that you can quickly read it, as well as infographics that will help you get the information that you need just at a rapid glance. The last thing I wanna comment on is the ethos of the website. This is a completely free website. There's no banners, there's no ads. We have over 40 authors who are writing or creating content for the website. We have 3 full-time graphic designers who are matching illustrations with the educational content. One of the biggest things I'm proud of is that every post that goes out is peer-reviewed by 3 people from the page. This allows us to have quality control about the content that we're putting out there. You can be sure when you read a post from Critical Care Now that it has been looked at not only by the author and myself, the senior editor, but also by 3 other people within the group. And we are very proud of the posts that we put out. CriticalCareNow.com was born out of the idea that to create great content, you need many, many perspectives. It can't be 1 or 2 people's opinions on things. It has to be a group of multidisciplinary individuals who come together and discuss how we take care of our most critically ill patients. I have never seen a website with so many collaborators at one time, and I truly believe this is how people will do educational content moving forward. 10 months into this website, and I am so proud of the hard work that the editors and writers and illustrators have put in. We have a lot more stuff that's coming in the next year and beyond. I hope you enjoy CriticalCareNow.com just as much as I do. I'm not only one of the editors and writers, I'm an avid reader and read it daily. Thanks for visiting the website, and thanks for considering us. And if you haven't, what are you waiting for? CriticalCareNow.com. My name's Haney Malamat, and I'll see you on the website soon.
All right, Haney, we're going to turn it over to you for a minute or so to give us your closing comments before we throw it to the judges.
Well, thanks for having me, and it's really an honor to even be considered for this. I really have nothing else to say except, this website is born out of the hard work of people who are committed to FOAMed, and I'm just truly proud to work with these people and learn from them every day. And I think what we're putting out there is something different and something very useful. And as many of the other people who produce FOAMed will tell you, you get emails, you get texts, you get tweets about people who you help, and you hear about patient stories. So for me, that's what it's all about. So again, truly an honor to be here and be considered. And thank you everyone for your vote.
That's powerful. Thank you for that. And now let's kick it over to our judges for their thoughts and comments. So we'll start with Seth, and we'll go to Megan, and then we'll close with Lauren here. So Seth, what do you think?
All right, great, thanks. Also, I just want to say on personal note, I'm sorry to derail things a little bit. I have some health issues and that's my dysarthria. So one, you're not hearing things. I'm slurring from speech. I don't want to get into it too much. If you want to reach out to me later, happy to talk about it. But I just want to get that elephant out of the room. Haney, I will say I'm a little biased. I've known you for years. You drove me from Baltimore and DC once after a nice phone meetup about a decade ago. I think a number of things that you've done here that are really good. One, the structure, as you start out with, having multiple contributors. I'm a big believer that many hands makes light work. So having that where lots of people contribute a little bit, before you know it, you've got a lot. Having the structure. So one, there's a constant flow of content, and two, people can figure out what they want and know, oh wait, Tuesday is the day I want to get X. I can go on Tuesdays and check it out. It's a nice way to do it. And number three, the multidisciplinary approach, PharmDs, respiratory therapists, etc., where you're just hitting different aspects where we can all learn from each other, is just great in so many levels. So good work, keep it up.
Thank you.
Awesome. So ditto, Haney. Obviously, I think all of us will try to be unbiased by the fact that we've known you for years. I think when I look at this, I've actually now already become someone on your webpage. I just went and got on to try to take a look. I love the clear organization. I love the variety of topics. We all loved the hair gel and your long hair as well. So kudos on the pandemic hair. I think my big question is, you mentioned the fact that blogs kind of come and go, and you talked about how this is going to survive because of the variety of contributors. So I see it in some ways as being like an academic life in EM 2.0, but would love to hear your thoughts a little more on that survival aspect and how you're baking it in, because to me, that's both the promise and the danger. But overall, just kudos on this terrific product, and I will use it. As those of you who were here last year know, one of my biggest kudos is my telling y'all that I'm going to use it on my next teaching rounds. I will use this on my next teaching rounds. So congratulations.
Thank you. Well, to answer your question, this was actually a year and a half in the planning before we launched. And what I realized is that if I signed one or two people per day, it still wasn't going to be enough. The burnout rate would have been high. So we didn't launch, and we never launch a new content day until we have at least 4 to 5 people who are committed to writing monthly. And what that means is that everyone writes one post per month, which is a reasonable lift, I would think, for people. And if they can't do it, and sometimes people find it's too much, then they leave and we transition people in. But, for the nursing day, for example, I've wanted to do the nursing day since the first day I thought about the website. We just had trouble getting a stable group of people. Now we have 6 people ready to launch, and we're launching May 18th. Shameless plug. So there's that. And that's how, we just sort of pace ourselves. It seems like we're exploding and we could implode, but it's very calculated as to when we launch a day. We just want to have a stable group of people because every day is a unique piece of fresh content. We've rarely had to rerun pieces, and we're very proud of that.
Thanks, Haney. And let's kick it over to Lauren.
I think that this is great. As somebody who has spent a lot of time trying to focus on like, how do I make this sustainable with a growing number of children? I don't know how they multiply, and work and all these other things. Like, how do I continue to do that? And I think that this is a great solution that a lot, other successful ventures have used, is pulling multiple people. I also love the peer review, getting multiple people to peer review it. I think it's something that is important. And sometimes overlooked. So I think that those are some incredible strengths in addition to the interdisciplinary aspect. I know that some of the people that talk with me about film and podcasts and most are nursing colleagues or RT and stuff like that. So it's great to kind of pull them into these conversations and really add to that there. So I think that this is really great. There are always subtle little things like looking at the blogs, like I want my citations in text, but that's because I'm a nerd. I don't think anyone else would notice that. I would guarantee you've probably gotten 0 comments on that thus far. But I think that this is a really great venture, and thank you for putting this together.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Great. Thanks, Seth. Thanks, Megan. Thanks, Lauren. And Haney, thank you very much for presenting first. We are going to switch gears now. And let me introduce you, please, to Annie Fulton. She is a registered nurse from the Bay Area in California. She currently works at Stanford Hospital in their float pool, and she loves floating down to the emergency department. When she's not working, she's spending time with her husband and 4-year-old son, and they're cycling, running, and spending way too much time working on her nursing podcast. So without further ado, let's see Annie Fulton's video about Up My Nursing Game.
Up My Nursing Game is an educational nursing podcast that uses expert interviews such as doctors, veteran nurses, occupational, physical, speech, and respiratory therapists to address common nursing questions and pitfalls. While the overall aim of the podcast is to improve nursing practice, my hope is that knowledge sharing and friendly conversation will help break down barriers that exist between nurses and the rest of the healthcare team. The podcast was recently accepted by the American Nursing Credentialing Center so that listeners can claim continuing education credits for each episode listened to. I started this podcast because I've always been an avid consumer of phone content. I found that throughout my nursing career, listening to podcasts on my commute into work was a really efficient way for me to stay on top of my game and keep growing as a bedside nurse. But unfortunately, there's not a whole lot of educational podcast content out there for nurses. So I've been listening to great physician podcasts such as EM Crit, Internet Book of Critical Care, The Curbsiders, to name a few. But while this content was so great, it didn't really apply to me as a bedside nurse. So last year, I had 2 weeks off of work. I was supposed to go with my family to Italy, but for obvious reasons, I was derailed. I set out and created the podcast that I always wanted to listen to.
I am an avid listener of the Up My Nursing podcast, and I just want to commend Annie for the episodes that she's putting out that have such a wide range of topics. I kind of feel like there's a lot of options for new nurses for education and things for physicians, but this kind of falls right in the middle. Like Annie, I'm not a new nurse, but there's so much to refresh on, and there's a lot of questions and curiosities that I share with her that are addressed in these podcasts. I love that I can go back and listen again. One of my favorite episodes is the rapid sequence intubation episode, where she and the physician really create this mental checklist of things to think about, and I got to just put that in practice yesterday. So I just really commend Annie for doing the podcast that we kind of all wish we had, 5 years earlier. And it's been such a great resource to use.
Up My Nursing Game podcast is a great teaching resource, and it invites speakers who are specialists in various fields. It's good for nurses from downstairs to upstairs, from ED to ICU. It discusses the evidence-based medicine as well as the real-world practice in caring for a patient. The topics range from how to insert a difficult Foley from a urologist to why some patients keep getting recurrent aspiration pneumonia from the perspective of a speech therapist. I was a guest speaker on the show for the discussion of alcohol abuse, and I was able to discuss the care of a patient with alcoholism from ED all the way to ICU. I felt connected to a lot of my ancillary staff when I was on the show. The practice of medicine is a team approach, and I feel that this podcast is a great resource to improve patient care as a team.
So this is the podcast website, simply upmynursingGame.com. And there is an ongoing list of podcast episodes that I have published in chronological order. You can see some of the latest ones here. There is an embedded player, so visitors to the website can simply listen to the podcast episode directly from the podcast website, or by going to wherever you listen to your podcast here. I have some of the most popular platforms listed: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, etc. I have an archive with a full episode list here that we could go into. Episode number 6, acute alcohol intoxication withdrawal syndrome, a topic that is very near and dear to anyone who works in an emergency setting. So not only are the show notes here, but I've also added graphics to give an additional visual component to the podcast episodes. I also like to cite sources that I used in the podcast, and additionally share some of the foam love and do a shout out to other foam producers who have covered the topic as well. So again, you can listen to the podcast in the embedded player or wherever you listen to your podcasts. While the intended audience of the podcast are emergency, acute, and critical care nurses, I've been pleasantly surprised to find that the podcast has drawn a wide variety of listeners. For example, at my last hospital, my most ardent followers were actually members of the rehab team. And I think this speaks to the teamwork component of the podcast that allows for this non-intimidating environment for healthcare team members to come together and learn from one another. Thank you for the opportunity to present at SAEM's Foam Showcase. I think my podcast is a great addition to the foam world because it fills in the need for more educational nursing content while also addressing some of the teamwork issues that arise in the healthcare setting. So go to upmynursingGame.com to start listening. Thank you.
Annie, that was fantastic. I can't wait to hear what you have to say about it. That was such an amazing video. I'm going to hand it off to you for a minute, and then we'll go to the judges.
Great. Thank you, Ellie. I just want to say thank you so much for having me on the showcase today. I feel honored to be here as the one nurse who's in a field of doctors here. And I think that, kind of goes to the one of my goals of the podcast is building bridges between nurses and doctors, as well as the rest of the hospital staff. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you for putting it together. I can't wait to hear what our judges have to say about this. So we're going to start with Lauren and then go to Seth and then finish off with Megan. So Lauren, do you want to start us off?
Absolutely. So I think that this is great. I think that, I think a lot of people have really wanted this, and I can't wait to tell some people, bring it up in conversations and refer to some things. And I love that the topics, it's not all like the super fun stuff, right? I mean, it kind of is to me, because I love taking care of pregnant patients and lactating patients. And I love taking care of my patients with opioid use disorder who have housing instability. And I love that you have an episode dedicated to, care of the homeless patient, care of those patients that oftentimes, it's not rapid sequence intubation. It's not hypotension and the stuff that a lot of us who are critical care and emergency medicine junkies really like seek the FOMED for. I love that kind of early on you've brought that in. And I think I love looking through some of the show notes that there are tips in there to like how to maybe empower people who, based on hierarchical things, may not feel that they're in a position of power to advocate or to ask questions. And, like whether it's like learning more, how do I learn more about that drug? Can you tell me a little bit more or something like that? I think that those tips and tricks are great because it's a two-way, oftentimes a many-way conversation. And we sometimes forget about that or don't empower people to ask those questions. So I think that type of guidance and sometimes showing people how they can ask those questions is great. I have to try to find something to pick out for constructiveness. And the only thing is I have listened to podcasts for a long time and I love them. I also listen to them at double speed because my attention span is short and like my commute is about 30 minutes. So I tend to favor shorter podcasts over longer ones. Also, as a producer, you can get more bang out of your buck. You can, have two podcasts that are related, but kind of stand alone. So one thing to consider is maybe experimenting with some shorter episodes and seeing how that goes over. It may not be chunkable if you've got a guest or something like that, but that's really the main thing I have. And that may make your same amount of work kind of twice the volume of episodes for sustainability.
Thanks, Lauren. Let's go to Seth.
Again, I agree. This is fantastic. I've known nurses for years who've listened to a lot of some of the core phone podcasts that are aimed at physicians and practitioners. So I think this fills a really important niche. I also love the combination of kind of you looking at your topic list. You span from basic nuts and bolts to more advanced critical care stuff. So that kind of breadth of coverage is great. Everyone wants to talk about RSI and fun, cool stuff. But really, most of what we do is nuts and bolts. And that's always really important. So I think that topic selection is really great. Also, the show notes looking through here, just the balance you have between, I think, depth and not going too crazy with how much you have here is great. Linking out to other topics or to other websites without reinventing the wheel. And to your sources is also fantastic. So overall, I think it's great. I love that you bring in the experts again from across the spectrum. So just really fantastic work.
Thanks, Seth. And Megan?
So first of all, I'm so jealous you had 2 weeks off. And this is like one of the hidden joys of COVID. We have Heaney's hair, we have your ability to start a podcast, right? Like these are the things that COVID gives us. But seriously, just kudos to you. I love seeing our nursing colleagues active in both the FOMED and kind of the wider kind of non-clinical world space. It is absolutely essential to us as team members for all of us to be equal players at the table. And if you don't already, I want to introduce you to an amazing nurse named Shauna Butler, who does a podcast for Johnson & Johnson around nurse entrepreneurs and nurse innovators. And I think you would love her. I also love the show notes. I think that those visual depictions are key, and we've seen it, whether it's with Haney's stuff or with Scott's or with Michelle Lynn's or with MRAP, that those show notes and those visual kind of backups are key for those of us that like to reinforce our learning, who maybe can do a little bit of auditory learning and then need a little visual. Seth and Lauren, I think Lauren's comment around the shortness was really kind of my biggest suggestion or critique. The other thing that I would love to see is for us to explore ways to try to increase that teamwork aspect, both to disseminate this to more emergency nurses and to use it as an opportunity to bring more folks from our team in. And so I think it's as much of an offer as a criticism, is kind of to think through, like, what does the next step look like? How do we make this more, how do we disseminate this and maybe get more docs to listen to the nursing perspective? Because it would be super helpful to us too. That's it. Thank you. Great work, Annie.
Thank you.
Thanks, Megan. Thanks, Annie. That was fantastic.
Thank
All
you.
right, so this is going to be tough. Let's move on to number 3. So let me introduce you to Dr. Sarah Fooey. She's an emergency physician out in the community in Toronto, Ontario. She completed her family medicine and emergency medicine residencies at the University of Toronto, and she's passionate about simulation education, whether it's in situ, in the lab, or online. She also feels passionate about overcoming the monotony of Zoom education for our learners, which is ironic since we're doing this on Zoom. But she's excited to share the virtual resus room with us today. It's an online simulation education project that has allowed high quality simulation education to continue despite all the limitations that have been posed on us by a physically distanced world. Dr. Fooey and virtual resus room, let's watch the video.
Hello, my name is Sarah. I'm an emergency room doctor in Toronto, and I'm excited to tell you about the Virtual Resus Room, my open access online simulation education project. This is the story of how a carefully formatted Google slide has been used to provide online simulation around the world. The origin of the VRR. I'll begin by taking you back in time. It's the spring of 2020, and physical distancing restrictions from COVID meant we had to say goodbye to the sim lab and hello to this. There were a few options for online simulation that existed. The first were the online simulation software programs. Very cool, good graphics, but expensive and only meant for single learners, so not a replacement for the sim lab. Then there was the marionette style sim, where facilitators or techs did the actions in the lab as directed by the learners who were observing from home. Finally, the most commonly used option of online sim was the facilitator guided screen share. And this is when the facilitators would show PowerPoint or images or a monitor and walk the learners through the case, much like an oral exam. All 3 of these options were excellent for the review of medical knowledge, and all had their pros and cons. But I felt that there was something missing. They might replicate parts of sim, but they weren't capturing the essence of sim. And what the problem boiled down to was this. They were all centered around talking, when we know that what makes sim special is doing. I wanted to create an online simulation solution that allowed the participants to actually do tasks so they could be more engaged, so they could work as a team and rehearse their crisis resource management skills. Now, before I tell you about the virtual resus room, this caveat is important. The VRR is not meant to replace in-person sim. That is impossible. No online simulation solution could ever replace the beauty of in-person simulation, but it's an alternative when in-person is not possible. Now I'll show you the VRR. This is the virtual resus room. First, it uses Zoom. Zoom can provide the audio and the visual so learners and facilitators can communicate with each other and mime actions like CPR and the all clear. The virtual environment is created by a Google slide. All the learners and the facilitators will simultaneously open up and enter the same Google slide document and make synchronous edits that are viewable pretty much instantaneously by everyone. I want to emphasize this. This is not a screen share. This is a collaborative document, so everyone can be simultaneously making changes like putting on monitors and putting on oxygen and typing in a text box, doing the same actions that you would do in the sim lab. This all makes more sense when you see it in action. Let's check it out. Begin by applying monitors. Learners apply monitors by clicking and dragging the image of the monitor into place over the patient's body. As this happens, you can see the facilitator typing in the vital signs in the text box of the monitor on the right-hand side. Next, get access. Place an IV by clicking and dragging the IV over the patient. Difficult poke? You can show how to do an IO by landmarking and then walking through the steps of the procedure. Assess the ABCs and examine your patient.
If I take a look at his face and airway, what do I see?
If you go to slide 4, you can see a picture of what his face and upper airway looks like. And if you press play, you can hear an audio of his upper airway sounds.
Thank you. So Marley, I see a little boy who is awake and alert. He has some obvious swelling around his mouth and a rash on his cheeks. This is what I hear.
Manage your patient's airway. Click and drag the oxygen into place on the patient's face, then choose your flow rate. To grab extra airway supplies, go to the airway tray on slide 3, copy what you need, and paste in place onto slide 1. Organize at the head of the bed like you would in real life. The patient's still hypoxic, you might set up high flow, or type in the settings you need to start BiPAP. If they need intubation, you can see what your view is on GlideScope. Give medications. Go to slide 2, your medication tray. Copy the med you'd like, then paste it in place on slide 1. Drag it into the medications given box to show it's in the patient. Use machines. You can cardiovert your patient.
So oxygen, I'm gonna take it off.
Excellent. So are we all clear?
Clear.
I'm clear, you're clear, the oxygen is clear.
Point of care ultrasound has been integrated. Look at the image and describe your finding. Do procedures. You can do procedures like this Craig by clicking and dragging pictures of equipment and then using landmarking lines to show where you would make your incisions as you describe your steps. Let's see it in action with the perimortem hysterotomy.
I'm just going to make another vertical incision, just like a nick with my scalpel, and use scissors to open up the uterus.
We're at 2 minutes.
Work as a team, divide into roles, and communicate clearly.
So Sarah, if you don't mind giving 8 puffs of Ventolin to this baby and let me know once that's been done. And if you could auscultate and let me know if his wheeze has improved, that would be great.
And just confirming the Benadryl as well as the ranitidine and methylpred have been given.
Feedback about the VRR. The virtual recess room has been well received through both informal feedback and a formal program eval study done at McMaster University by both learners and facilitators. Generally, people comment that it's easy to use, that it's engaging, it's a welcome break from the screen share-based education, it's effective, so learners comment on learning both about the medical content, but also about the importance of crisis resource management skills like communication, and it's fun. It's been used in multiple settings by doctors, nurses, paramedics, and interprofessional groups. It's been used to replace in-person sim, to add sim to a curriculum, for courses and conferences, and for fun. It started at the University of Toronto, and it's since expanded around the world to be used by more than 20 programs in more than 9 different countries. The VRR is entirely open access. Everything you need is on the website. You could start by checking out a demo room or watching some videos. For participants, all the instructions you need to use the VRR can be found here. If you're a facilitator, you can create your own room by using one of the ready-to-run cases. Choose the case you want, and you'll see a summary and some links to the Google Slide room and the case progression chart, and some instructions. When it's time to run the sim, you can learn how to facilitate by reading these detailed step-by-step directions. Everything you need to make it easy is here. Thank you so much for listening to me share the virtual recess room. I also wanted to thank the participants in the demo videos and the many amazing educators I've had the chance to work with over the last year. Now I want to hear from you. I'd love to hear your thoughts, feedback, and suggestions about the VRR so we can work together to keep making the world of online simulation education a little bit better.
Wow. Sarah, that was amazing. We'd love to kick it to you for a minute before we go to the judges.
Thank you so much. I think there's 2 things I just want to add. The first is that SIMS always struggled with being kind of at its core a little bit inequitable because it's so much easier to do SIM at academic sites, university affiliated sites, or in the community where there happens to be a local champion who just loves SIM. And my thing that I've been most excited about the VRR is that we've been able to kind of bridge that academic to community divide. We've done a lot of kind of outreach events. We have quite a few more planned, and that's outreach like within a province, in Canada, and across countries. And the other thing that probably makes me the most excited is that when we've all been feeling very kind of burnt out and worn out working the Emerge over the last year and a half, the sessions of the VR really give people a chance to just share their love of Emerge, to talk about other cool, interesting cases, to kind of rekindle the spark of what made us choose this profession, whether it's residents or med students. And it's obviously like a free and easy way to do that. So I'm excited to hear your feedback. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. We are going to start with feedback from Megan, and then we'll go to Lauren and then finish off with Seth. So Megan, do you want to start us off?
Sure, I get to start this time. So to me, one of the great measures of a great sim is always, does it make my own heart rate go up a little bit? And it did, right? I'm like sitting on the edge of my seat being like, are you going to get the tube in, that little one? So kudos to you on that. It was terrific. I am so curious about how you did this, Sarah, and whether this is all kind of algorithm based or whether the instructor has to walk through each of those steps with the kind of cut and paste. I also want to recognize that even if it is like an entirely human management of the sim sequence based off of people's actions, this is just a tremendous amount of work and effort. And I just, I can't give you enough positive feedback on it. I think that, you know, as Lauren had said, and with the podcast, and I think all of us are facing challenges. These are also incredible this year. that it's tough to find constructive criticism or questions. But I think that my one kind of constructive critique would be to think about, exactly what you said at the end, which is how do we democratize this further? How do we expand those cases? And I see some collaborations here between the three people who have already presented in expanding this. I can imagine Haley putting something like this on his website and then us including a nursing aspect to it as a way to make it easier for more people to use it, but just kudos.
Great feedback and a fantastic idea. All right, let's kick it over to Lauren.
I was looking at this and I was like, I paid a lot of money to take oral boards, and this is so much better. Like, this would actually be like a decent evaluation, and you figured it out during a pandemic. So I was it brought up many more questions about things we won't get into right now, but this was amazing. So great job there. I thought it was really neat. I was like playing around with it on the computer a little bit. And I think it's really neat how it has that interactive component and things like that. I guess my only, I echo all the things Megan said. It's really hard to come up with something. And my only thing is anytime I use something new or introduce something new or think about introducing it, I wonder how much time does it take somebody to like get, to get over that, like, this is something new, I got to figure out how this works, and have that be that, I just worry about that as like a little bit of a barrier, like, oh, this is intimidating. And I think that you showed that it like can be done easily. But that's my only thing is like selling that, like, this is something that can be user friendly. If in fact it is, I think it is something neat, but this is kudos, this is a great job.
That's a great question, Lauren. Sarah, since you did mention that it's been implemented at 20 places all around the world, and on your website, you've got this great map. Do you want to talk a little bit about the friction of getting people started and accepting this new SIM process?
Yeah, for sure. Implementation is actually quite easy because it is the same formatting as you need to use a PowerPoint. So generally what I recommend is people do a 30-minute facilitator training before the day of their first session. And within 30 minutes, facilitators will feel comfortable using it. The learners don't usually need as much time. They tend to be a little bit more adept with technology. So I recommend a 10-minute pre-brief for them. And then obviously I give everyone the link to the demo ahead of time so they can play with it. I haven't had any issues with that, the 30 to 10-minute combo.
Great, thank you. And then we'll go to Seth.
There's so much about this I love. Number one, as people mentioned already, just the fact that you put this together to solve an obvious problem during the pandemic last year is great. Number two, just the use of technology here. Instead of reinventing the wheel, using tools that we all have, Zoom and Google Slides, that just, there's a little bit of a learning curve for some people, but this is stuff that's there, it's free, it's stuff we use all the time. I will say I'm biased here because I use PowerPoint for a ton of stuff. I made visual abstracts in PowerPoint for 2 years, and it's just like, you can do so much more. It's not just slides. Similarly, using the Google Share function to interact in real time. I'm frustrated by that when like two people are editing the same document in Google. This is a great like positive use of that same phenomenon, which is fantastic. The use of icons sliding around onto the template you built, it reminds me so much of like the LucasArts adventure games I played growing up, where it's like, oh, I need to put the IV in the arm. It's just so nice. This isn't a bunch of criticism, but I think a potential for growth is, I feel like it would not take a lot to get people with the right tech to make this into something a little more polished. It's a big difference. I'm not criticizing. I think like you could just up this a lot, which would be fantastic. But again, I think this is so creative in so many ways. I think to me, the challenge with this is kind of like in similar is the opposite of what, if not that it's so hard to use, but so easy to use. For me, one of the big problems with Sim, like when I'm helping facilitate a Sim session, is people are like, oh, what do? I want them on oxygen. It's like, well, to put them on oxygen, it's like putting up that fourth wall. And I feel like I haven't seen this in real life, but I'm curious if people are like, wait, do I really need to do this, or does it happen? And that like making people not play this game but actually do this stuff or buy-in might be hard. But I could also, watching the video of people doing it, people get into this stuff quickly, so I could see it happening. But again, this looks like fun. I kind of want to do some cases.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we all want to do some cases right after this as well. So let's go to our last contestant. And this is going to be Skin Deep from two people at the team at DFTB, at Don't Forget the Bubbles, we all know very well. It's actually going to be a tag team. We're going to have Becky Platt, who's giving the introduction, and Tessa Davis is actually presenting in the video. Dr. Tessa Davis is a consultant in pediatric emergency medicine at the Royal London Hospital. Becky Platt is an advanced nurse practitioner in pediatric emergency medicine, also at the Royal London Hospital. And Becky is and they're both one of the part of the central team of the Postular Foam site, DFTB, don'tforgetthebubbles.com. Becky is passionate about learning, education, and improving care for children and families. So we're going to go straight to the video, which involves Tessa, and then Becky's going to be back to give us some commentary.
We started Skin Deep because our patients were telling us about a lack of diversity in images online. And we do see that reflected in our own teaching and training. And so we decided to put together a team of wonderful humans to change just that. So, who is on our team? We've got a core team of 20 people and a broader team of around 100 people. They are all contributing to Skin Deep. They include paediatricians, advanced clinical practitioners, nurses, medical students, researchers, AI experts. We've got people on the team from all over the world, in Kenya, Mexico, Sierra Leone, South Africa, Peru, Australia, the US, Ireland, the UK, and many more. We all came together on the Skin Deep team because we think this is such an important topic, and we wanted to be part of the change. But rather than just taking my word for it, let's hear from some of the other members of the team about why Skin Deep is so important to them.
Increasing the diversity of paediatric images used in medical education of common skin and genetic syndromes is crucial if we want to achieve a correct and timely diagnosis for all.
One would have thought that the diversity within our society is reflected in our medical education, however it's not.
So Skin Deep as a project means so much to me because it means that we can collect a really wide range of images of different skin conditions on a variety of skin tones, and it will help us diagnose and care for the patients that we look after.
Being a Black British doctor, I know all too well what it feels like to not have yourself reflected in the teaching resources that are used in medical education.
What happens in the process of collection and review of the images? Well, we collect images from hospitals and clinicians all around the world. All the images go through our consent process, and that process has been through an independent legal review. Each image gets reviewed by a relevant specialist. The purpose of this is to confirm the diagnosis based on the photo, but also to add a brief description. These images are then added to our website. And on the website itself, people can search by description. So you could choose to see all erythematous rashes, or you might want to see just hypopigmented rashes. You can also search by body part. So if your patient or child has a rash around their eyes, for example, you might want to see other rashes around the eyes to help you identify it or compare it. Or you can just search by diagnosis itself and browse the list. What about other aspects of Skin Deep? So we have a research team on Skin Deep that have been doing loads of great work. This team has done a call to arms to highlight the issue of the lack of research in this area, and that was published in the Lancet Child and Adolescent Health. We've set up a quiz on the Skin Deep website, and we use this quiz to assess perceived and actual performance of clinical recognition of conditions on various different skin tones. What about the website itself? Well, we've got over 450 images on there. We've now got 100 set aside for research. We cover over 150 conditions, and we have sections on burns and lacerations too, for example. So it's not just dermatological conditions. We're being included in 2 large paediatric textbooks, which are using our images, the new UK undergraduate exams, the Royal College of Paediatric and Child Health exams, along with multiple journal articles, university courses, and online teaching courses globally. What does the future hold for Skin Deep? Well, we'd love to have more of a patient voice on the project, and we're looking at bringing in some parents as members of the Skin Deep team. We also want to continue to develop the AI side, and we're starting to develop an algorithm to create a machine learning tool to diagnose skin conditions in children regardless of their skin tone. So we've achieved a lot in the first 10 months of the project. We've got an amazing team with varied skill set and lots of enthusiasm and ability to get things done. We have great plans for the future, and the future is looking really exciting for the Skin Deep team.
Well, that was absolutely fantastic. And now we're going to kick it to Becky Platt.
Hi, thank you so much for inviting us this evening. I also need to say hello from Tessa, who's currently driving home from her late shift, so she will be able to hear us, even though you can't see her. So thank you again for allowing us to present here. I just want to take a moment to acknowledge the multiple supporters that we've got in terms of many organisations around the world. And that includes, for example, the Royal College of Paediatrics and Child Health, the British Association of Dermatologists, the Eczema Association in Australia, the Black Medical Society, and many more. And I think that just is going to help us to be sustainable into the future. I think the other thing is we know that this is helping clinicians to provide better care for children. We've already heard from lots of people who said, gosh, you know, sometimes I just browse your website and I learn something new every time I look. And I think most importantly for me, we often hear from parents who say, do you know what, I tried to Google my child's skin condition and I just came up with a load of pictures of children with white skin and it doesn't look the same. And they're right, it doesn't look the same. And that's exactly what we're trying to address. So we think we're doing a great job in increasing diversity of skin images online, and I hope you do too. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Becky. That is such important work. All right, let me throw it to the judges. We'll start this time with Lauren. We'll go to Seth and then finish off with Megan. Lauren, what do you think?
I think that this is great. I think this is a huge knowledge deficit of mine because I was trained to recognize rashes, and I'm pretty darn good in people with like light hypopigmented skin. And I wasn't trained on NOS. I never had exposure other than in clinical practice, which is where it matters. Like that's where you don't want to make the mistakes. And I clearly remember being a resident and being like, I don't see a rash, or like, I don't know, it's a little bumpy, but like not having that same knowledge that I would immediately have that pattern recognition for because it's been hammered in my head. So I think that this addresses a huge knowledge gap. I love that it does so for free. I love the images are good. They're also kind of tricky, which I don't like, but also reinforces the very need for this project. Coming up with what do I have? What suggestions do I have? The first is I am very much a believer in taking quizzes and getting feedback. And I love that there's that option, but you have to register. And for me, I was at the end of a shift that wasn't very busy. I was like, I'm just going to play around real quick. And I was like, oh, but I don't want to register and fill out all this information. So for me, that was initial barrier. I stopped. And then I was like, stop being lazy, Lauren, just do it. And so then I went and did it. So for me, I worried that might, detract. Some people might say no, and I get the reason for doing it. But that's just one thing. And then the other is when you click on an image to enlarge it in the quiz, it doesn't open in a new tab automatically, which is something to consider, because then if you hit the back button, you lose your quiz. And so that's just something else these are like minor things. These are little tech things, but those are the only things I could come up with. Great work.
Thanks, Lauren. I will sort that.
And let's go to Megan. Or sorry,
I think you said
Seth.
Seth
I'm
second.
sorry, I said Seth.
Yeah.
No, let's go
And
to
I
Seth.
can,
Yeah,
we're all
no.
friends.
You get the last word. So again, I just want to echo, I think the importance of addressing, this historic gap in diversity. I was trained, like Lauren said, on patients who look like me. That's not what a patient look like. Derm lesions are hard enough to begin with, so adding the extra element that it's both harder for me, and then as people have been saying, and I think or people say, or you said in the video, patients don't recognize themselves in the videos and the textbooks. So really, just branching out, this is just win-win-win in so many ways. It's so sad that it's taken so long to get to this point. I love that you're working with bigger organizations, getting integrated in textbooks. From a user point of view, looking at the way you have the image organized, number one, in multiple ways, so there's more than one way to navigate, which I hate to say something good about Epic, but the best part about Epic is there's more than one way to skin the cat. And same thing where different people work different ways, or different times using things in different contexts, having different ways to navigate is important. Also using tags instead of I don't know, an organization system where you get down certain routes, but you can tag one thing and another thing, and then get the Venn diagram of the different topics is just fantastic. So making harder things easier and making it easier for patients to recognize themselves and get the care they need is just so great. So keep it up.
Thank you. Thanks, Steph.
Thanks, Steph. On to you, Megan.
And I'll
The
finish
last
out. I promise to be succinct because I know that we're kind of nearing the end of our hour here and folks have other things to move on to, but I don't need to be succinct. I can just say that this is awesome. Like, this was really terrific, especially in less than 10 months. I also have to comment, everybody's videos are so cool. And I need to find out from all of you how you learned how to do this incredible video editing. In terms of so I'm not going to repeat what others have said. My one thing is around the tags. So when I am in the ED and trying to figure out what a condition is, I'm like, this is, maculopapular, or and you have the tags, but clicking through it when I was playing through it before this session, I had some trouble getting them to apply correctly. I felt like sometimes it narrowed stuff too much. I would love, not to say that I want it to be like a commercial product, but I would love a smoother way to try to look for rashes that look like what I'm seeing in front of me in the emergency department. But otherwise, stellar. The last thing that I was, and James, one of my residents, the name, for those of us that are not part of NHS, the DBFT, I kept typing it in wrong when I was searching for it, I was like, was it DBFT Skin Deep or DTFB Skin Deep? So that would be the other thing. Last thing to any residents on is that double dipping is lovely. I love that you both created a foamid product and have published about it and have done media. That's like the perfect trifecta of academic awesomeness. So kudos to you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It really is. All right. As Megan said, we are running short on time. So let me just talk very briefly about scoring. We are going to divide the scoring into 3 parts. The first is we're going to hear from the judges in just a second. They're currently writing their choice on a tablet or a piece of paper, and they're going to flip it over in just a minute. Not yet, judges. And then a third of the score is also going to come from you, the live voters, right now. If you go to, as noted in the chat box, if you go to foam.show into your browser, you can vote now, and you get a disproportionate level of impact because you are watching right now. And then a third is going to be based on Twitter activity generated in the following week. So from now on, distribute the link to your friends, encourage them all to vote and to like and post and share. And Steve, do you want to actually jump on and talk about what we need to tag for the Twitter activity to be counted?
Absolutely. So the SAEM Twitter account, if you're not following it yet, go ahead and start following it. Tomorrow morning, we're going to release 4 tweets with each of these great contestants, submissions on them. Every tweet that gets liked, commented on, shared generates different amounts of points. So get on Twitter, make sure you're following the SAEM account, and then tomorrow morning, these tweets will get released. I will share all 4 of them and be unbiased, but choose your favorite, comment on it, share it, give it a like for the third aspect of scoring.
All right, perfect. Thanks, Steve. And so now, since we're short on time, we're not going to do individual flips, but Seth, Megan, And where is Lauren? There she is. All right, go ahead and on the count of three, flip 1, 2, 3. All right, we have Skin Deep, VRR, and VRR. Okay, so right now, the virtual recess room is up 2-1, but that's just a third of the votes. So go to foam.show, make sure you vote, and then as Steve said, make sure that starting tomorrow, you like and retweet those individual tweets, because I've seen people come back after this one third of the votes gets counted. So thank you all so much for being here. Thank you to all 4 of the presenters, all 4 of the teams that put this together. As I said before we started, in prior years, any one of these 4 would have won just because of the amazing content and the fantastic videos. This is just an exceptionally hard year, and I can't believe how fortunate we were to actually pull off getting these 4 finalists into the FOAMed project here today. So thank you all for being here. Have a fantastic night, and please continue to vote on Twitter.